Good morning, folks. My name is George Almodovar. I am a realtor and author of The No BS in Making Millions in Real Estate. Today's topic will be how to minimize bad tenants. The other day I made a video, but I was kind of rushed, so I want to go over some tips that if you are a novice landlord, you may want to hear and prevent, because you can learn from other people's mistakes. I know I have. I read hundreds of books, as well as I've gone to college and major in business administration and real estate. I've gone to seminars such as Trump's Institute. So I'm very knowledgeable when it comes to real estate, and my most knowledge comes from Fort Knox. Learning from the street, learning from being an actual landlord and dealing with X amount of tenants. Okay, to be more exact, 40-something tenants of my own, and another 50 of someone else's managing. So that might not be a lot for some people, but if you're starting out, you know what I mean. That's a lot of great experience, and I do have experience since 1998 managing my own tenants. So you may want to hear this. Okay. Now, some people may not agree with me with some of the aspects of how I go about things as far as minimizing bad tenants, because some tenants can be good and eventually they'll turn bad on you. So this is why the topic is called minimizing bad tenants, because you want to not avoid it, because you can't avoid it all, but at least you want to reduce the amount of bad tenants. So the way I begin with, obviously, is advertisement. I go on Craigslist, I advertise on Craigslist, I go put an ad in the newspaper. Now the way I do it is I want to know where my tenants are coming from, because some things cost money, and obviously you do not want to spend out money and not get nothing in return, especially when it comes down to advertisement. So I'll have them call a person and I'll give them a reference number or a name, for instance Charlie, Carlos, and just by them asking for that specific person, I know whether that person came from Craigslist or they came from New York Newsday, New York Post, Daily News. So my point is, I'm able to track my advertisement and know whether they're being successful or not. Okay, so that's for starters. Now, on my advertisement, I actually put my requirements. I want this, or I just put a number and have them call that number. Now, once they call that number, some people say it's better to pick up the messages constantly. Listen, I get hundreds of calls. I can't be picking up every time, or even pay somebody to constantly be picking up, because sometimes you will get a lot of callers that aren't qualified, and they're going to waste your time, and they're going to give you their sob stories and their life stories, which we don't have time for that, to be honest. Okay? This is why we tell them what we want from the beginning. When they call the voice message, we tell them we want 3 recent pay stubs, state ID, and social security number. Okay? That's what our minimum requirements. Now, once they call in, we verify the income, whether it's government income or whether it's employment income. But the point is, we want to verify the income. We want to verify that they are employed. We want to verify how much they get paid, because we go by certain criteria or ratio. For instance, I normally try to strive for 45% of the rent shouldn't exceed the total income. So in other words, if the income is $1,000 a month, I'm just giving you an example, $1,000 a month, you want to make sure your rent is not above 45%, because if it is, they can't afford to live in your place, because eventually, if they were to fall behind, they won't be able to catch up. Okay, and things will happen. Things happen in life. I also remind the prospect tenants from the beginning, when they're signing the application, that please save 10% of their net income, okay, and allocate it towards saving, because emergencies do happen, and we don't want them using our rent, because that's my money. All right. I also tell them there's a $45 late charge. And honestly, I said the other day 5 days, and that was incorrect, because I go by 3 days. If you're due on the 1st and by the 3rd I haven't seen no rent payment, by the 4th you got a $45 late charge. Some people may say that's cruel, but think about if I don't pay my mortgage in time, that's a late charge there. Think about the legal fees I have to pay to begin eviction, serve the processes to serve the notices, and all that. It creates a lot of issues. So on the application, I asked for 3 references. It should be 5. Most of the references are family members or friends. This is why when I call, the number is a friend, and as I stated before, if the friend is not so good, then that brings a red flag, because normally you tend to stick by people that are most likely like you. And there's a saying that goes that you are the average of your closest 5 friends. So if your 5 friends that I'm calling your references are not that good, that tells me a lot about you. All right, and that's a red flag. I don't make a determination only on that, but there are other criteria. Obviously, the other criteria is the income, as I stated before. The employment history, how long have they been employed? Because if they just started working, how I know if he's going to be a good employee, he's not going to get fired or terminated, and then he can't afford the rent. So I want to see his work history. I could tell a lot by the pay stubs. I could tell whether he pays child support. I could tell, how many hours he works. Is he lazy? Does he work full-time, overtime? Does he work part-time? How much he gets paid an hour? There's a lot of things you could tell by the pay stubs. Is his wages are being garnished. So these are all the things you want to look for, all these red flags, because if, for instance, I'm sorry, but if they pay child support and the income is reduced, okay, how is he going to pay his rent? I mean, is there going to be issues later on? So you got to be aware of all these little factors that I look for. Also, obviously, you got to do a background check. I have made decisions with people with some type of record. However, it depends. If the person, it was recently, or was for he robbed or burglar, believe me, you get all sorts of prospect tenants coming, or applicants coming by trying to get an apartment or a rental, and you got to look at that, because even if the person pays on time, you're risking your other tenants. If the person has an attitude or has issues with that he's been a thief or whatever the case may be, he must start selling drugs within your complex, for example. He might try to rob one of your own tenants and break into his apartment. So these are all the things you can minimize with a bad tenant. Also, the rules and regulations. From the beginning, it's stipulated on my rules and regulations application form. So they are aware, and I make sure they become aware of what is required of them. Because if they do not agree, that means they are not a submissive personality. Submissive. Okay? And you don't want to deal with someone who's not submissive, because it might be issues for you later on. These are the rules. Are we in agreement? Yes or no? If not, then you move on to someone else. Okay? Make sure you get your rent on time. Make sure they deposit the rent directly into your bank account. Things of that sort. So, you want to minimize bad tenants. Make sure they sign the application. Look for things, for red flags, such as them skipping things in application they're trying to avoid to answer. That could be a red flag. Make sure that you verify the landlord references, that indeed it is the landlord who you're calling and not someone else, not a friend or family member who's going to say, yes, he's a great tenant, and it's not true. Okay, it's a family or a friend. Also, even landlords will sometimes say, yes, he's a great tenant, only because he's trying to get rid of a bad tenant. So you want to be careful with that. This is why you want to check both references from a previous landlord and a current landlord. Okay, you want to find out in the application, why is he moving? Why is he relocating? Sometimes you get the truth. Sometimes it is the truth. Sometimes it can be some lies. And you want to make that determination by knowing as much as you can, or as much as information from that tenant. Okay, I have even gone, to be honest, and when I know they have a vehicle, I have even gone, and if I see their vehicle is nasty and dirty, okay, that tells you a lot about the person, how he carries himself. Do you want to bring that type of person into your rental? Who's going to probably cost you more money because there will be rodents and roaches because the person is not clean, doesn't like to be tidy or clean up after himself. So all these little factors I take into account, and so should you. Okay. Now, something that I remember, which is why I did this video, is, would you lend somebody $10,000 off the street without knowing who he is? I want you to think about that for a minute. Would you just grab somebody off the street, not knowing if he's a criminal, if he's going to pay, or whatever, and lend him $10,000? I'm sure you would. I mean, if you do, something is not right with you. So my point is, the same way you wouldn't lend somebody $10,000 off the street, why would you bring someone who you do not know who he or she is and rent them an apartment that's worth a lot more? You know how much money you lose out within losing rental because of vacancy, or fighting him in court because of damages that he may damage your property, burn your property, and the insurance will only cover so much. All these things could be avoided or minimized at the very least, which is why you got to make sure you are careful and you do all your due diligence from any prospect. Look for any red flags. And something I learned, man, if you feel something is not right, listen to your gut instinct. You most likely are. Okay, you do your due diligence. You go by the book. But if your heart is telling you something's not right with that person, listen to yourself. Look for other better candidates. Okay, so I hope this helps. Any information you may have, shoot me out an email. I'm also available at www.familyhomesforsale.com or at my own website at georgealmodovar.com. Any questions regarding rentals, remember I have full details here in the book. And the reason why it's called the No BS is because I actually show you the No BS. Yes, you can make money in real estate, but you have to learn how to minimize issues with bad tenants. You got to learn how to invest, how to get started, and all that information is right here in the book. So I suggest you read it. Become familiarize yourself with it. Learn from my own mistakes so you don't have to make the mistakes that I have made. I hope this helps. Have a good night. Thank you very much. Have a blessed day.